just had a bit of a visit to the Louth Cemetery, and took some photos of the cross. It was a lot bigger than I expected to be, the famous Louth cross in the cemetery. And the history of that cross is, it was put there a long time ago, over 100 years ago, I believe, by a fellow who was known as the King of Louth at the time. He must have been a fairly wealthy person. His first wife, Mary, passed away. I'm not quite sure how. I've done zero research on any of this. This is just what I know from what I can remember. A mate of mine wrote a poem about it, and I can remember bits and pieces of the story. But Mary died tragically. Her husband must have been fairly fond of her, because he had a marble cross made in blue Ballarat, which was then put on a paddle steamer, when the paddle steamers used to ply the river trade here from Wentworth to Bourke, and sent the cross up on the paddle steamer. And of course a drought hit part way up and it got stranded somewhere, and that particular paddle steamer, I've forgotten its name, but it holds the record apparently for the longest and the shortest trip on the Darling River back in the paddle steaming days. And the shortest was 9 days traversing the river, and the longest was over 4 years, because that's how long it took to get the cross up here. The river dried up on the journey up, and she got stuck, and they had to wait for all those years for the river to rise enough for them to finish getting the cross to its resting place there at Louth. And anyway, what they did when they erected it is what the story's about. And they've erected this giant cross and aligned it so that the sun setting would reflect light over the house that this Mary lived in on her birthday. I think it was in August, 19th of August, don't quote me on that. And yeah, so it would glow most evenings. They call it the glowing cross. You could go up there and see the sun reflecting on it, and reflects a glow off it. And once a year it would line up, and the reflection would shine over the house that Mary lived in a time in Bourke, a married life. So that's a pretty remarkable tribute for a man to do for a woman, isn't it? It's pretty astounding, really. And yeah, makes you wonder, makes you think. And the other story, of course, there was a grave out there that I really wanted to find, but once I got there I realised I had no hope, and I sort of had an idea that I had no hope. I'd heard, I was pretty sure, and again I'm going on memory from years ago, a mate of mine, the same bloke who did the research about the cross, he let me know in his historical research, he actually found out that the man who killed Ned Kelly, the man who actually hung Ned Kelly, was buried in the Louth Cemetery. Now, that just sounds bizarre, didn't it? But could this be true? So I thought I'd like to go and see if I can find his headstone or something, but apparently there is no headstone. I couldn't even really find any proof, just on the names on the plaque that was there, whether he is there or not. The only reference I could find to it really in my entire 2.5 minutes of research I did on Google was that apparently he did die in the Bourke Hospital. So he was definitely in the country up in this area, and so if he's died in the Bourke Hospital, there's a very good chance that for some reason he may have been buried in Louth. Maybe he was living there. So the man himself, he lived quite an extraordinary life, and his name was Elijah Upjohn. This is the Hangman. Elijah Upjohn was his name. Born in England, His first conviction, he was convicted for stealing a pair of trousers, and for that he received 3 months hard labour and 2 lashes. 2 lashes of whip. Doesn't sound too bad, does it really? Yeah, but he was only 11 years of age, so when you put that into perspective, 11 years of age, you get 3 months in prison and 2 lashes. Yeah, that's a bit of a hard start in life, isn't it? And apparently his father had already been sentenced to Australia, was in the penal colony already. And anyway, a couple of years later, at the age of 15, he was caught and convicted again of stealing a pair of rabbits, I think it was. So I'm guessing he must have been poaching, unless they had him in a coop, I don't know. But yeah, I remember that poachers were taken very seriously in that era. And whether or not it was poaching, I don't really know. Also, he's convicted of stealing 2 rabbits, and so that copped him another sentence in jail. It was only a short one, I think, six weeks, something like that. But then, within 6 months of being released, and by this time he's just turned 16-year-old, again he's caught for stealing a pair of shoes or something silly like that. So they gave him, and this is where he's at, the 3rd strike. And they did have a bit of a 3rd strike policy back in them days over there. So 3rd strike, you're out. Off you go to Tasmania for 7 years. Okay, at the age of 16. And of course, who knows what he went through in that time. I've heard there was more floggings and. Yeah, would have been a very, very brutal time in Van Diemen's Land. You know, let's face it, it hasn't got the greatest of reputations of being a good place to be sent in our time. You know, so anyway, he spent 7 years down there, moved back over to the mainland, and apparently he tried to have a bit of a go and he became a bit of a businessman. He married, he had children, but alcohol got the better of him, and he got in trouble again, went to prison. This is years and years and years later, and mainly due to alcoholism, I think he was in prison, and they sort of made him the hangman. And I've read in years gone by, I've read that what they used to do is whenever they needed a hanging done, they knew where he drank, so they just go and pick him up, lock him up for alcoholic disturbance or drunken behaviour or whatever, a trumped up charge, and lock him up, get the hanging done, and they let him go again. And yeah, so he was the hangman. I think he used to get paid about £5 for doing that. And he was the last man to hear Nick Kelly's words of what he actually said. But anyway, interesting story how a hangman, and I suspect he must have been running away from his own demons. And like a lot of people, I think throughout history, they've run to the west, places like Berg, to get away from themselves, maybe. And hopefully, I'm hoping he found some peace out here, and maybe getting out of the city might have been just what he needed. Then again, they like their beer out here, so it might have been the best place to go to for a drunk. At least he didn't have to hang anyone out here. Speaking of beer, I had to pull into the Shindies Inn while I was in Louth and have well, I was only going to have one, but that means 2, which actually turns into 3, as you know. And yeah, so I had a couple of little beers there, only light alcohol beers, and enjoyed the company of some locals, and it was lovely and cool in there. And one of the ladies came in and said it's 39 degrees outside, so it was pretty hot when I was filming, and I thought, gee guys, it's too hot to drive anywhere, do anything. I just want to sit here and have a couple of quiet beers and a chat, let it cool down a bit, which it has now. It's quite nice actually out there now. And so I'm just making my way home back to Berg, and hotel. I think I've got some emus. No, hang on. No, we've got some wild goats across the road here. Lots of wild goats up in this country, and I'm not 100% sure anymore whether they are wild. I think they might be. I know there for a long time. They've been through a bit of a cycle where when I first came out here, they were just a pest and were shot on sight and left where they died. When they died. And the farmers would just encourage, if you see any goats, just shoot them, because they're just taking grazing off land that our sheep could eat, you know. So I've shot more goats than I can count. I wouldn't have a clue how many. There's a humongous amount of goats that I've shot in my career. And but then, towards the later years, I was in Berg. Things changed. They actually had a market for them selling the goat meat, Australian wild game meats. So I think they were sending them over to Europe along with the rabbits. I was a professional rabbit shooter for a long time, and I think the goats were going over there with the rabbits and the kangaroos and the wild pigs. I caught wild pigs out here and boxed them for the chiller box to make money as well. And not so much for the Australian market. They weren't really usable, but yeah, very sought after in some European countries like Germany and places where that sort of meat was a traditional meat, and they loved it, but it was very hard for them to get over there nowadays. So the market, they actually all of a sudden these goats were worth something, and they hadn't been worth anything really before. In fact, they were a pest. So they used to, they started mustering them. And all of a sudden they're a commodity, these goats, and they're mustering them and selling them off by the thousands. And I think they were actually probably doing better out of the goats than they were out of the sheep for quite a long time. Well, I think that's all over. I know where they used to store the goats. That place is now no longer operating. And so my guess is that they're just back being a pest. There may be some market for them somewhere, I'm not sure. I'll have to find out. Somebody would be interested to know, actually. But yeah, goats. Goat meat. It's the most eaten protein on the planet. And it's eaten by more humans than any other form of meat. So you might turn your nose up at goat and go, oh yuck, oh, who'd eat a goat? But there's more humans eat goat than eat anything else. So you're in the minority if you think that way. Well, I got to tell you, I'm definitely in the minority because I can't stand the bloody things. But I've just got a bit of a pet hate, which has never left me. I've eaten the stuff, don't you worry about that. Like I said, I've shot thousands of goats. I have no idea how many. Too many, I think. That smell of a billy goat is just the most foulest thing, and it gets into your clothes. It's horrible, and I could never ever eat a goat, like knowing once you've smelled that smell, it was just infested into myself, and yeah, it just psychologically damaged me. I mean, if a smell's strong enough to psychologically damage you, that's how strong it is. And yeah, those big billies, they weren't very pleasant. We weren't really eating the big billies, of course, but I was guiding for people and chasing big horns, sets of horns, trophy horns. Bigger the better. So the big ones are always on the old smelly billies, and of course they'd shoot them. I'd find them, they'd shoot them, and then I'd have to dress them out so they could take home their trophies. So I was the one that got stuck with the smell, and I tell you, just turned me off the goat animal forever. Hopefully one day I'll be able to eat goat meat again, but so far it's been about 30 years, so don't like my chances.